Dave here at Hawaiian South Shore. We have Dan Mann
No,
in East.
Costa Rica.
Oh, Costa Rica.
It's okay.
So you do all your R&D over there. Nobody
Yes,
around, and
very,
you can surf
very
all you want.
serious. Yes,
So the S boss,
yes, sir.
we're getting those in. Could you tell
Okay.
me a little bit about it and also the name and
Yeah.
the just the whole shape and then also the underside.
Okay. Yeah. So, um, well, it has roots back to the fall of 2020, peak COVID, and Kelly came in with about 3 or 4 boards, I think 4 boards, and he had ideas, and we were at the shape-in room at Firewire, and we were just going over. No one was in the factory; it was just totally empty, and we were just hanging out, working on boards. And he had ideas about the most outstanding thing that people will notice right away. The most obvious difference is, or thing that stands out the most is the outline. Is a bullet nose. The idea is going back for something he's been messing with trying to get rid of swing weight and trying to get the board shorter and fit better in the pocket. So that bullet nose allows for the last little bit of 2-3 inches of the nose to be essentially chopped off, and um, so you can ride a shorter board, but it also allows for a real parallel outline, a short board outline. So that was one of the main things he wanted, especially on the early prototypes, is really narrow. He wanted the board to be very fit, real, getting a lot of drive off the outline, not just the rocker and the bottom contour. And so that was a big part of the whole initial layout of the outline. And then the round tail is very close to the original FRK round tail, and that tail is just, God, I mean, it's just tried and true. You're a Hawaii boy. Brody Sales rides it, and it's been on the FRK. Kelly's been riding the FRK. I've been riding the FRK forever with that tail, and so that was an obvious choice for the tail on this board. And then the next, from the design standpoint, for me, the bullet nose is cool and somewhat novel, but the main thing that I had to get my head around is how to make the V. He wanted a double barrel set into a V, and I with the sweet potato, baked potato, all the potato worlds boards, I've worked with a lot of double barrel, real deep, real exaggerated, as you know, but it's always set within a concave, and I always thought, and felt like the concave allows a hovering, like fluttering above the water, no limit on speed, no drag. And so when he said he wants to do similar double barrel, but in V so under the front foot, have it be V instead of concave, I was like, oh, that's all. V has always been a real, equates to me in my head as a surfer. It's always draggy and pushes water. Other than paddling, it helps with paddling. It helps with flutter, like it slices the water better instead of sitting on top of the water. And so it eliminates that. But I've always felt like it has a ceiling on speed. And then, so I was a little hesitant about that at first. And then, so, we did some more tweaking and refinement at that time on fin placement, as well as how the concave goes out the tail. And it's not what I would think most people would think is expected, which is to be continuing the V rather uniformly as it starts up under the chest. It's not uniform out the tail. It actually turns back into more of a single concave, more of a regular shortboard. And so it's just, everything's just combobulated and spun around. And he got on it right away, loved it. And then I made myself one, and I was like, that ceiling of what I initially thought was going to be in place from the V was just not at all there. And I think it's just because the combination of the outline and the double barrel. The double barrel breaks up any kind of governor or drag, and it allows for that high acceleration rate on top of the water. So
Wow, interesting.
yeah, it's a pretty dynamic board.
So with the V so far forward, does it track a little?
No, so that's the thing is all those kinds of things. So essentially, because it's a relatively it's a board you'll ride short, and so my FRK is 6'1", sometimes a 6'2". I go down to a 6'0" every once in a while, but this I ride a 5'11" S Boss, and so and I ride the 5'10" quite a bit too, but I'm almost always on the 5'11". So the reason I think it doesn't track is because it's actually a pretty short board. So like I'm standing on a lot of the board. I'm getting the whole board underneath me, and because it's split, the double barrel splits it up lengthwise. You're essentially riding that one half. You tip it over, and it immediately engages off that concave on one side, and then drives the water through the fins. And so the maneuverability and drive combination that comes from being on that narrower outline, allows for just a really unique and interesting and my preferred turning radius. Like it's insane. Like I can prolong that turn and draw out a line, or I can fit it real tight in the pocket. Yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
So, in the beginning of the conversation, you started talking about the FRK tail. I know we
Mhm.
went over this before, but for the people that are watching, can you talk a little bit about that tail and some of the things that you did to the round tail?
Sure. Yeah. So that tail outline goes back to 2015 when Kelly first came along with Firewire. He was looking at a board I was riding of mine. It was an old unibrow. Do you remember the unibrows?
Yep.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So he was looking at that, and he was we were just casually. I had a board just laying on the ground, and it was my personal board. I just fixed a ding in it or something. And he goes, "Yeah, I don't like this tail outline. I like a straight spot here." And he pointed with his toe about 6 inches up from the tail. And he's all, "I like my tail, the tip of the tail, to be more blunt." And so I just was like, oh, okay, I remembered that. And then finally, when I made him some boards in 2015, later that year in 2015, that was in probably February, and then in July, and then I think again in August, I made him some boards. And so I just remembered that. And so that tail has a little straight spot right behind the front fins. It's real subtle, but it's not an even continuous curve from the wide from the from the front foot wide point. It goes back and then it has a little delay in the curve of the outline, or a straight spot, and then it goes into just a real clean, perfect, uh, very right at the tip. It's just a nice hook, clean outline, nothing extreme, but it's actually quite pulled in so that his foot, the idea for the design and what he said that day when he's looking at my board is that he likes his whole foot to be tip to toe, the heel and the toe to be able to bridge the whole board, the whole width of the tail. So that what does it be, like 4 inches up from the very tip of the tail, roughly, is where his foot will be. That's about the width of it. On his boards. It's about the width of it. The length of his foot is that width of that part of the tail. Does that make
Wow.
sense?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So
Huh.
that was the origin of it, and we've just kind of stuck with it.
Yeah. Oh,
Now
right
it's a
on.
very predictable staple.
Yeah. So, you also said that the swing weight, since you kind of pretty much chop the nose off and push the volume down into the board, when you're turning it, does it feel a lot lighter or it just swings around a lot faster?
Yeah, it swings around as if the whole board's underneath you more, like the potatoes and everything. It has a
Oh,
similar effect to that, if that
so
makes sense.
the guys that are riding the sweet potato and they want some performance and they hop
A
on
little
this,
more.
it'll feel
Hmm.
real good.
Yeah,
Oh, right
yeah,
on. So, what
yeah,
kind of
yeah, yeah.
surf is this good for?
Well, so I've been saying, I mean, gosh, there's this one I've made myself about 4 or 5, and there's three in particular, but this one is my oldest one, and I've ridden it in everything. Like I've ridden it in, and that's so cliche. Everyone always says that, but it goes good in everything. It's my best board that I've ever had. Like
Uh-huh.
I have this one board that was a short board, performance board from 2002, 3. That was like my ultimate magic board. My two friends that ride the same boards as me both agree, but we've been chasing that for whatever 20 years now. And this is the first one that's been on that level. And yeah, I've ridden it in when I was back in California over Christmas time. It was real big, and I surfed it there. It's a big juicy beach break, but I also got a point break. Yeah, reef breaks. Kelly surfs it, and there's a lot of clips of him in. I don't know if there's a whole lot of footage of him in Bali on the first batch, but he's surfing mainland Mexico, which is a point break. Tons of a beach break in Ventura. He surfed it on this some spot out there that has no name, and that was it's sort of a rightish point breaky reef break, and so he surfed it the most there, and then the wave pool, of course, we've all surfed it there.
Yeah. Oh
And
man, excited.
Kevin Schultz surfs it in San Clemente, in lowers all day long. So
So good for an open face wave and something that properly stands up and barrels.
yeah,
Oh man, I'm excited to get it. So the front
cool.
rocker, is it pretty kicked out up, or is it real gradual, kind of like the FRK, or?
No, it's what I did. So the original boards had a different distribution of the rocker, and then I, just to be safe on the second batch, I stuck the Dominator rocker on there, and now I was like, well, because when you shorten the board, the nose, the idea is he always talks about cutting an outline nose out, but then what do you do about the rocker? Because the extension of the curve is on that outline is supposed to be married to a curve of a shortboard rocker. So what rocker do you put with it? And so I put the Dominator on there, which is a more lower rocker entry on the nose and the tail. And then I just added a little bit of kick, just like 1/8 of an inch on his boards, a little bit more than a normal Dominator.
Wow.
Yeah.
And then the tail
And
rocker is pretty flat.
the tail rockers, it's like neutral. It's like kind of medium. It's sort of right, like kind of in the middle between a groveler and a performance board, like a full on flipped up performance board. It's not, but it's down from that to a groveler shortboard, like a performance shortboard. Like I'm
Oh, that'd
sorry,
be perfect.
like a Dominator-y kind of shortboard.
Oh, that'd be perfect for
Hybrid,
guys like me that
that's the
can.
word. Yeah,
Yeah, when there's too much kick for me, I'm not good enough, and it's hard for me to get that drive down the line when there's a lot of
yeah.
kick on the tail.
Same with
Yeah.
me. Yeah, the
No,
initial projection right when you take off, it's like, man, you got to have the initial speed right out of the gate, going from paddling really hard, getting up the speed, and then just using that momentum straight out of the gate is super critical for me. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
As fins go, I've been riding my template, the larges in the front with the mediums in the back, just because the tail's a little more pulled in. My large trailers for me were a little too much fin. Same with Kelly and Kevin. They both have been riding a little bit smaller trailer because the tail's a little more pulled in than our normal. So like what they experimented, they ride mostly the KS thrusters, the endorphins, but then they also have experimented with the twins with the little nubs in the back and all kinds of crazy combinations. But yeah, for me on the bigger guys, on the bigger boards, I would pair the front fins with either a little bit smaller thruster trailer or a little bit smaller quad trailers. Start out with what you would normally pair a good board, your standard fins that you prefer the most with that board, and then go from there.
So do you mostly ride it as a quad?
Almost exclusively. I've ridden it as a thruster a lot, but I always go back to a quad personally.
Yeah.
Kevin goes back and forth pretty much. He's probably 60-40, 60 quad, 40 thruster. Kelly, I think, is a little bit more. Well, I think he's a little more on the quad side too.
Oh,
But
interesting.
performance thruster guys are gonna want to throw the thrusters in there probably.
Yeah. What about 2+1 on this board?
Yeah, Kelly did that a lot. I think I don't know exactly which one he settled in as his favorite trailer. So I better not speak to that, but a larger front fins or his biggerish twin with all kinds of different combinations of the trailer. Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's open to a lot of interpretation, and that's what's cool about what's going on with the fin world right now in general. People are realizing that they can kind of create their own plate with that, and grab and choose from the buffet, and it's pretty nice to see people experimenting with that more instead of being dogmatic, and because it's very personal. I've been saying that, like with fins are so key to the board, and each person is going to feel something a little bit different than anyone else. So it's really important to invest some time on finding the right combination for yourself.
Hey, right on. Thank you very much. So, also it's in the Ibolic construction, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
Hmm.
the volcanic Ibolic construction.
Yeah, it's coming out in both. I think initially it's just going to be an Ibolic, but you might
Okay.
know better than me. But yeah, I've ridden
So,
in both, and then both are good.
so does the board feel a little bit more floaty compared to like a regular PU? And by how much do you think?
So that's kind of the $1 million question a lot of people ask. For me, I've been riding the epoxy and EPS cores and different combinations of Ibolic or helium or whatever combinations, even those the Timber Tech and everything. Um, to me, it's I guess it's a little lighter and a little less dense feeling in the water. But again, to me, it's a pretty that's a pretty small component overall compared to getting the size right for you, getting the right fins, and getting yourself used to the board. And then as far as like if it's how it relates to Caputa, it's probably just kind of like a regular Firewire compared to a regular PU. That same old dilemma, or I
Yep.
guess debate continues on. To me,
Yeah.
the V does a lot to eliminate any kind of chatter. So that's one of the most interesting things about the shape. I have one NPU with carbon over it that has zero chatter, but the difference between that and my other boards that are Ibolic and others that are in Ibolic with volcanic, I don't notice a difference in chatter, even though the core is a little different.
Oh, right on. That's good info.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
You're welcome.